Welcome back to STAAR History Blitz. My name is Mrs. V. Gonzalez, and we are continuing our 8th grade social studies curriculum. And today we'll be talking about the causes of the American Revolution. Here is a detailed list of all of the information that we'll be covering in this video lesson. Let's start off with the French and Indian War. As the 13 colonies continued to grow, they started to expand west. They started to encroach on French territory. What that means is they crossed the Appalachian Mountains and started to go and live in that French territory. So eventually this leads to war between France and Britain. Britain sent the 13 colonies soldiers, supplies, weapons, and spent a lot of money fighting this war. The British did win the war, but what they also got was a really high national debt. That means they owed a lot of money. After the war, some of the colonists wanted to move into those western lands that they had acquired after the French and Indian War. The problem was there was a lot of Native Americans there, still there, obviously. They didn't leave, France left. That caused a lot of fighting with the colonists, and Britain said, hey, we don't want to waste any more money defending you now against the Native Americans living there. And so what they did is they passed the Proclamation Line. Parliament said you are barred or prohibited, not allowed, to cross the Appalachian Mountains into that western land. Of course, this angered the colonists. Additionally, Parliament started to pass a series of economic policies, such as taxes on sugar, printed material, the Stamp Act, Townshend Act. All of these taxes were being imposed on the colonists without their consent. That means without their permission. And the purpose was for Britain to make money because Britain was in debt because of the French and Indian War. The colonists were so upset, and their motto became no taxation without representation. They believed that their civil liberties were being violated. They didn't have anyone in Parliament, 3,000 miles away. They didn't have anyone over there to speak for them. They protested in their colonial assemblies. They boycotted British goods, even formed the Sons of Liberty that was led by Samuel Adams. And the Sons of Liberty was a group of men who would boycott the British goods, who would, tar and feather tax collectors. Britain ended up sending soldiers to enforce these tax laws. They passed the Quartering Act, forcing the colonists to feed and house soldiers in their own homes. Obviously, this increased the tension between the British colonists and Parliament. A dispute between the British soldiers and the colonists in 1770 led to the Boston Massacre, where Crispus Attucks, an African American, was the first to die. In 1773, the Sons of Liberty, as a form of civil disobedience, ended up dumping the British tea that was in the Boston Harbor. They ended up dumping it into the water. This became known as the Boston Tea Party. More than 342 crates of tea were dumped in the harbor. This was British tea. So obviously, Britain was very upset that they had done this. So Parliament responded with the Intolerable Acts. And the Intolerable Acts were a series of policies, of rules, saying we're going to close the Boston Harbor until you pay for the tea. They enforced the Quartering Act. They dissolved all the representative assemblies. And any British soldier who committed a crime in the 13 colonies, they would not be tried there. They'd be tried in England, which, wasn't fair. People like Thomas Paine wrote Common Sense, urging the colonies to start, thinking about independence. He really opened up the eyes of ordinary people to fight for independence. During this revolutionary era, there's a lot of figures that we need to know. Today, we're just going to talk about a few that were part of the causes of the American Revolution. For example, Patrick Henry famously said, "Give me liberty or give me death." He was saying freedom is worth dying for. As we continue, we know that the king during this time, the monarch for England, is King George III. Samuel Adams, as we mentioned, is the leader of the Sons of Liberty. Thomas Paine wrote Common Sense. Mercy Otis Warren, she was a female patriot. A patriot is someone who supports independence. And she wrote poems, plays, pamphlets urging the colonists to fight for freedom. And Crispus Attucks was the first to die in the Boston Massacre. It's also important to know that a loyalist is someone who wants to stay controlled by England. They are loyal to the King of England. That concludes the causes of the American Revolution. Thank you so much. My name is Mrs. B. Gonzalez, and we'll see you on the next video lesson that has to do with the Declaration of Independence and the actual battles and events of the American Revolution.